Welcome to Redacted Reality. If the allure of the shadowy, cryptic, and mystical tales captivate you, then please subscribe and hang around. Chapter 4: The Threshold.
The door to the dusty bookshop creaked open, and there she was, Sarah, leaning over a cluttered desk engulfed in the dim amber glow of a desk lamp. Her silver-framed glasses perched precariously on her nose as she scribbled notes into a leather-bound journal. Shelves stacked high with ancient tomes and brittle scrolls surrounded her, a stark testament to her obsession with the supernatural. Sarah had always been drawn to things most people would rather avoid: ghosts, unresolved tragedies, and the secrets buried beneath polite society. She looked up as Robert and Nick entered, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "This must be important," she said, pushing her chair back and standing. "You never call unless there's trouble." There was no fear in her voice, only restrained excitement, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Robert glanced at Nick, his jaw tight, and then back at Sarah. "It's more than trouble," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We just came from the old Whittaker house, and..." He stopped, shifting uneasily, as if the words themselves weighed heavily upon him. Nick stepped forward, his usual calm demeanor cracked, his eyes darting towards the shadows in the room. It's happening again," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The same signs, the noises, the presence. But this time, it's stronger. It's more aggressive." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that betrayed his mounting fear. Robert leaned closer to Sarah, his tone growing sharper. "We need answers. Fast. If we don't figure this out now, it's going to rip through the town like last time. Or worse." The air thickened with the weight of their words, and Sarah could feel the intensity radiating from them. A twinge of apprehension flickered in her chest, but she quickly buried it, nodding firmly. "Then we'd better not waste any time," she said, her voice steady but laced with determination. The old Whittaker house stood at the edge of town, a shadowy silhouette looming against the darkened sky. Its decaying facade bore the marks of countless years of neglect, with ivy creeping up the weathered walls and windows clouded with grime. Once a grand estate, it now exuded an air of desolation. Its fractured shingles and sagging roof threatened to collapse under the weight of time. The front porch creaked ominously, the boards warped and splintered, as if warning visitors to stay away. Whispers of ghostly tales clung to the house like the mist that often surrounded it, and the townsfolk rarely dared venture near. To those brave enough to look through the cracked panes, shadows seemed to twist unnaturally inside, as though the house itself were alive, watching, waiting, and holding the secrets best left buried. The duo approached the house with cautious steps, their flashlights casting weak beams that danced across the rotting porch. Lily hesitated before placing a hand on the tarnished doorknob, the cold metal sending a shiver throughout her fingers. Behind her, Marcus adjusted the strap of his backpack, his jaw set in a mixture of resolve and unease. "You ready?" he muttered, his voice quiet but firm. Lily nodded, swallowing hard, and with a sharp inhale, she twisted the doorknob. The door groaned in protest, the sound echoing eerily through the night before finally creaking open to reveal a suffocating darkness within. Dust motes hung thick in the stale air, their flashlights slicing through the gloom and illuminating broken furniture, shattered glass, and layers of grime that blanketed every surface. Each step across the warped floorboards sent faint but deliberate creaks through the house, as though it were announcing their trespass. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive, carrying the faint scent of mildew and something indescribably rotten. Somewhere deep within the house, a faint sound echoed, a groan or perhaps a whisper, and the pair exchanged uneasy glances before venturing further inside. Lily froze mid-step as the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps echoed from the shadows ahead. Marcus instinctively swung his flashlight towards the source, the beam quivering slightly in his hand. A figure emerged at the end of the light, cloaked in tattered robes that seemed to shift and ripple as though alive. The hood of the garment obscured their face entirely, leaving only an unsettling void where features should have been. "Who's there?" Marcus called out, his voice cracking just slightly. The figure remained silent, their presence palpable and suffocating as they tilted their head almost imperceptibly, as if appraising the unwelcome intruders. Then, without warning, a faint, chilling chuckle echoed from beneath the hood, sending a jolt of primal fear down their spines. The chuckle seemed to hang in the air, reverberating unnaturally as if the house itself were mocking them. Lily instinctively reached for Marcus's arm, her grip tight, trembling. "We need to leave. Now," she whispered, her voice barely audible but thick with urgency. Marcus didn't respond immediately, his flashlight still trained on the figure, which had not moved an inch. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted, the oppressive heat giving way to an icy chill that seeped into their very bones. Their breath became visible as short, panicked puffs of mist. The robed figure raised a hand, thin and skeletal, its movements impossibly fluid, and pointed directly at them. A low, guttural sound rumbled from deep within the void of its hood. Words in a language neither of them could understand, but that carried an undeniable air of malevolence. Without waiting to interpret the meaning, Marcus grabbed Lily's arm and they stumbled backwards, tripping over debris in their haste. The figure didn't pursue, but seemed to watch, silent and unmoving, as they scrambled towards the door. The once ominous groans of the floorboard now served as a frantic countdown to their escape. Behind them, loud crashes echoed throughout the house, as though unseen forces were tearing it apart in their wake. They reached the door and threw it open with force born of desperation, stumbling out into the night. The oppressive atmosphere inside the house seemed to dissipate instantly, but they didn't stop to look back. Instead, they sprinted into the cold, unforgiving darkness, the faint echo of the figure's sinister chuckle lingering in their ears. Their hearts pounded wildly, each beat threatening to burst through their chests as adrenaline coursed through their veins. Fear clung to them like a second skin, an unshakable presence that clouded their senses. Marcus's hands trembled uncontrollably, his mind a chaotic swirl of panic and disbelief, while Lily fought to suppress the sobs rising in her throat, her breaths coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Every shadow in the darkness felt alive, every sound amplified into a potential threat, feeding the gnawing terror that refused to loosen its grip. They were consumed by a shared, primal instinct to keep running, away from the house, away from the figure, away from the unknowable horror they had barely escaped. After what felt like an eternity, their sprint slowed to an unsteady jog, and finally, they collapsed onto the damp earth, gasping for breath. The world around them was eerily silent, save for the rhythmic pounding of their hearts and the occasional rustling of leaves in the cold night breeze. Marcus glanced at Lily, his wide eyes reflecting the dim moonlight. He struggled to find words, his voice catching in his throat. Lily clutched at her knees, trembling, her face pale and streaked with dirt. What was that thing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thundering in her head. Her question hung in the air unanswered as Marcus shook his head. He didn't know. He didn't want to know. The weight of what they had just experienced pressed down on them like an invisible force. The further they got from the house, however, the less real it all seemed. as though the darkness itself was trying to erase the memory, to make them doubt what they had seen. But no amount of distance or denial could shake the deep, gnawing truth they now carried, a truth they didn't dare speak aloud. The silence stretched on, broken only by the occasional crackle of branches in the distance. Marcus forced himself to his feet, his legs screaming in protest. "We can't stay here," he muttered, his voice hoarse and barely steady. He offered a hand to Lily, who hesitated before letting him pull her up. "Where do we go?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder as though the specter of the unknown might still be following them. Her fingers twitched, the lingering adrenaline making her hands unsteady. Marcus looked around, the forest a blur of shadows and indistinct shapes. "Anywhere but back," he said after a long pause. No direction felt safe, but standing there, paralyzed with fear, was only inviting danger. They had to keep moving, even if every step felt heavier than the last. With no better options, they started walking, the damp leaves crunching faintly under their feet. The chill of the night wormed its way into their very bones, seeping into every corner of their tired bodies. The oppressive weight of the experience lingered, and an unspoken agreement hung between them to not look back. Whatever had happened, whatever they had seen, was now behind them. It had to stay that way. But as the minutes dragged on and the forest stretched endlessly ahead, Lily couldn't stop herself from whispering, "Do you think it's still out there?" Her voice was barely audible, as if speaking it aloud might give the terror shape again. Marcus didn't answer right away. He couldn't. He didn't know how to reassure her without lying. All he could do was keep walking, hoping that the darkness ahead held something different than the horrors they left behind. The memory of the encounter was impossible to banish, no matter how hard Marcus tried. It had started with an unease they couldn't name, a faint hum in the air that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. Then came the shadows, shifting unnaturally among the trees as if they were alive. At first, they thought it might have been an animal, perhaps a deer startled by their presence. But as the shadows grew closer, their movements deliberate and wrong, it became clear this was something far worse. The figure that emerged from the void wasn't human, at least, not entirely. Its limbs were elongated, stretched too far to be natural, and its eyes glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. It moved with an eerie silence, save for the occasional creak, like strained wood bending under pressure. Lily had screamed then, a sharp sound Marcus would never forget. He had grabbed her arm and ran, his only thought being to put distance between them and it. Whatever it was, it didn't chase like a predator. Instead, it lingered, as if savoring their fear. The last thing Marcus remembered before it vanished into the depths of the forest was its terrible, unearthly stare, like it was trying to drag them into the same darkness it came from. The forest finally released them as they stumbled upon a cracked asphalt of an old, overgrown road. Gasping for air, Marcus looked around wildly, his heart pounding as though it might burst from his chest. Lily clung to him, her breath hitching in uneven sobs. They finally found their SUV on the side of the dirt road where they had left it. They crawled into the car and drove off into the barely illuminated darkness, apprehensive about what lay just outside the scope of their headlights. Marcus knew that they needed more information before they dared to go back to that house.